Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today, your primetime destination news, newsmakers, talking points. The big talking point tonight, oil is on the boil. Stock markets are spooked. LPG prices could rise. Bangalore and Chennai hotels are saying they do not have enough gas supply. Tomorrow, Bangalore's hotels could be closing down. How will the oil shock impact India? Among my special guests is one of the country's leading economists, Neelkant Mishra. I'll be joined also, among others, by an Iranian dissident today, but there's plenty to look forward to, as always. But the big story that we are breaking at the moment, Chennai, Bengaluru hotel bodies have now flagged an LPG shortage. Chennai Hotels Association has written to Prime Minister Modi saying that they will have fuel supply only for 2 days. Bengaluru Association, many hotels have stocks only for up to 3 days and are saying that tomorrow restaurants and hotels in several parts of Bengaluru will be closed. Government sources, though, are insisting there is enough LPG supply and households need not panic. Government sources saying LPG waiting period is up from 15 to 25 days, and they claim they are scouting now for more LPG suppliers. Government sources saying LNG or pipe gas prices are unlikely to change as of now. So clear. Okay, let's go straight across to Aishwarya Patil from Business Today and Nagarjun Dwarkanath, who heads the South Bureau. But first to you, Aishwarya, let's be clear. Government is saying they have enough oil supplies for at least 40 days. They've said over 6 weeks of oil supplies. But we are already seeing LPG shortages in several parts. Hotel owners in Bengaluru, Chennai saying they will have to close down come tomorrow. They do not have enough supply. Chennai saying 48 days, Bangalore 48 hours, Chennai, Bangalore saying tomorrow. Can you tell us, does the government have enough stock, or is it prioritizing households over commercial establishments for now?
Well, certainly 100% domestic households are priority at this point, is what we've been picking up from our sources in the government, specifically for oil marketing companies which do provide and give us these gas cylinders, like Indian Oil Corporation, BPCL, HPCL have specifically been ordered. In fact, a letter was sent to all of these oil companies in that order stating that all of their LPG production should be first given priority for domestic usage and commercial comes in later. In fact, there are Ujjwala and non-Ujjwala users, as you know, who benefit from the subsidy scheme that remains. Although the 60 rupee hike per cylinder has come through, but there is no relief really for commercial users, because these are places like restaurants, as you mentioned. So the strike was inevitable because these prices have gone up, and so the impact on businesses was bound to be reflected. But bottom line, the government has said priority will be given to domestic LPG households. That will be the priority as far as the government stance is concerned. And as far as the OMCs are concerned, yes, they have already said we have enough supplies for the next 50 days, both LPG as well as crude supplies as well. So that's the update so far. All of these oil marketing companies for the next 50 days are secure. In fact, we've also been told time and again by government officials that even after the 50-day period, we have enough supplies. We are diversifying our sourcing strategy. We are looking at getting more LPG supplies from not only the US but also Canada and a couple of other geographies as well, exploring Algeria, Australia, Canada, Norway for more LPG supplies. That's the update so far from some of our sources in the government.
Okay, I want to go to you, Nagarjun. Nagarjun, the Bangalore Hotels Association is saying that tomorrow many of them will close down because they do not have LPG supply. Now, is this a pressure tactic? What are you picking up? Because now Chennai has also joined in.
Well, that's true, Rajdeep. What has happened is since morning, the Hotel Association have been getting calls over 500 to 600 is what the president said, that he's been getting calls since the morning. And there's a panic-like situation because the Hotel Association are not able to refill their cylinders. And they're saying that few hotels might finish their cylinders and commercial gas by tomorrow afternoon. So post-lunch, few restaurants might shut across Bengaluru, and over the next 72 hours, 7,000 such restaurants might shut because they have stock of only 5 to 10 cylinders, and each day they need 5 cylinders is what an average hotel that would consume is what they are saying. So they're trying to meet the Union Minister for Petroleum and Gas, Mr. Rajdeep Singh Puri, on the 11th. It's not just Bangalore, Chennai also has flagged the same issue, and this is not something that the Hotel Association is trying to put pressure, but this is genuine concern. It's not just one odd hotel that across Bengaluru we have seen Hotel Association calling each other and asking them, do they have commercial gas so that they can borrow? But unfortunately, all of them are saying that they have only 2 to 3 days supply left, and which the Bangalore citizens will have to be prepared to see a shutdown over the next 3 days.
Okay, possible shutdown in Bengaluru. So clear impact of the West Asia crisis now on what's happening domestically. Nagarjun and Aishwarya, appreciate both of you joining us here on the news today with that big breaking news. We've been seeing today global oil markets are in complete turmoil. Crude prices surged to over $114. Brent crude briefly touched $119.50 a barrel after jumping past the $100 mark amidst the war in West Asia. Prices have nearly doubled in weeks on supply fears and risks to key energy routes, though they slightly eased after signals that the G7 may release strategic reserves, and Saudi Arabia's Aramco has offered spot sales. For India, which imports about 85% of its crude, the spike raises concerns over inflation and higher costs across the economy. Take a look at our top story tonight.
Global oil markets are in turmoil. Brent crude, the world's benchmark, surged past $100, and today the spike turned historic. Brent crude touched $119.50 a barrel, before falling after indications that G7 may release strategic reserves, and Saudi Arabian oil company Aramco offered spot sale. In less than 3 weeks, global oil prices have jumped from roughly $66 per barrel to $100, rattling markets and governments alike. The trigger? War in West Asia, supply shocks, and fears that key global energy routes could be disrupted. Economists warn the oil shock could push the global economy towards recession and stagflation. Every $10 rise in crude could shave nearly 0.5% of global GDP growth. Higher fuel costs are also fueling inflation, driving up food prices, transport costs, and core inflation worldwide. Governments across the world are scrambling to contain the fallout. Japan is preparing to release strategic oil reserves, while South Korea plans to fuel price cap. China is cutting oil product exports. Thailand has suspended oil exports. And Indonesia is considering higher fuel subsidies. For India, the stakes are especially high. India imports nearly 85% of its crude oil, making the economy highly sensitive to global price shocks. A sustained spike could sharply increase the country's import bill and put pressure on the rupee. The aviation sector is among the most vulnerable, as fuel accounts for a large share of airline operating costs. If the rally continues, airlines may be forced to raise airfares. The impact is already being felt at the ground level. LPG prices have been hiked, adding pressure on household budgets. A sustained oil rally could also push up inflation, complicating economic policy and affecting corporate earnings. But the government says the situation remains under watch. In a written reply, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman told Parliament that inflation in India is currently near the lower end of the Reserve Bank's target band. Yet economists warn the real test will come if oil prices stay elevated. Because in an import-dependent economy like India, every spike in crude eventually travels from global markets to the wallets of ordinary citizens. Bureau Report, India Today.
So market spooked, oil prices showing extreme volatility. What lies ahead? Joining me now, Neelkant Mishra, Chief Economist, Axis Bank, Head of Global Research at Axis Capital. Good to have you on the show, Neelkant. We've had 24 hours of extreme volatility in crude prices because of the West Asia war. The market's totally spooked. The Sensex down by over 3%. How do you explain it? Is the oil economy deeply linked with stock markets in India and globally? And is it going to get worse before it gets better now?
No, I think the markets are finally waking up to the fact that this is a war which is not ending very quickly. Every dollar per barrel, if it lasts for one whole year, is a significant drag on the economy. Just oil, we import about 1.8 billion barrels equivalent every year. In addition to that, there is a significant amount of gas imports. So there could be, for every dollar increase, a $2.5 billion impact on the Indian economy. If given that oil prices are up about $40, that's nearly $100 billion of impact. So if this lasts for 1 year, there is clearly a concern. The good thing is that the oil forwards are not moving as much. So the oil markets expect that the war ends soon. For the markets as a whole, though, this can create new vulnerabilities. So there are many other stress points in global financial markets which can start breaking apart if oil stays at this level. So remember that India is not the only big economy which is going to get badly and negatively affected. There can be other stress points that start damaging it. So it's the uncertainty around which is actually spooking the market. Because
Neelkant, a report by Nomura recently said India is among the 3 most vulnerable Asian economies to high oil prices in terms of import bill, current account balances, the other 2 being Thailand and South Korea. So clearly what's happening in West Asia is going to have a deep impact on the economy. You mentioned possibly the impact on GDP as well. So could you see a slowing down of the economy in general if this war gets prolonged?
If this war gets prolonged, see, and that's a big if, because as I said, if this is a war that lasts for a very long time, more importantly, the disruptions to oil supplies last a very long time. So if this lasts 1 whole year at current prices, we could see $100 billion impact on the terms of trade. So imagine if 2.5% of GDP is the extra money that we have to pay, there is a significant impact on growth. There will be a significant impact on inflation. I think the currency will need to adjust quite meaningfully. And all of these uncertainties can become quite worrying. But I must say that the likelihood of this lasting 1 year is very low. Because, and I would like to re-emphasize at this point that India is not the only economy which is negatively affected. China is also a big oil importer. The US has significant vulnerabilities in fuel prices at the pump, political vulnerabilities, even though they are net exporters. There is a lot of political sensitivity on high oil prices. And remember that this is a supply-driven problem. So all the states, so Bahrain, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, all of whom used to ship oil and gas through the Strait of Hormuz, are now not getting any revenue at all. And some of these are very frail states. So things are going to start becoming really hairy for some of these countries as well. And therefore, it is not in anyone's interest for this war or this uncertainty to last more for as long as 1 year.
Yeah, because when I look at government reports, they seem to suggest India currently maintains a combined energy buffer of over 250 million barrels of crude oil and refined petroleum products, equivalent to approximately 4,000 crore liters. It provides us a stockpile of about 7 to 8 weeks. So the worry, presumably from what you're saying, is if this war goes beyond April, May, if it heads into the summer and the early monsoon, that's when it becomes a real drag on the economy. Am I correct?
Correct. And in the interim, there will still be impact. So, for example, an auto producer, a car maker, the spray paint is actually running, those guns run with LNG. And LNG supplies, which are non-critical, meaning that household energy supplies are being sustained. So industrial energy supplies have been curtailed. So they'll have to find alternatives very quickly. So yeah, so there can be impact even shorter on a shorter time frame than that, but that should be temporary.
But we've already seen the impact on LPG, a rise in LPG price. So the other concern, of course, which affects the common man is inflationary pressures. The Modi government has been rather successful in containing inflation over the last decade. The fear is, of course, that these are uncontrollables. If the oil supply gets hit, if the war is prolonged, then it has a cascading impact on inflation. Am I correct?
Correct. So the good thing is that almost 70% of the crude oil that is consumed in various forms by the Indian economy goes through this route of petrol, diesel, kerosene, LPG. And you would recall that for a long time, the oil prices had been falling down, but the fuel prices at the pump were not changing. So the intermediaries, which is the oil marketing companies, have over the past year and a half built significant amounts of buffer. So at least again, it's a 6 to 8 week period, even if oil prices stay at wherever they are, or maybe they go up slightly higher, their ability to cushion this, so the retail prices do not need to rise significantly. Once they start to rise, meaning that this lasts longer, as you said, goes into May, June, July, then I think their ability to hold back may be constrained. And therefore, that's when the inflationary pressures really start to build up. For the remaining 30%, and remember that there are other aspects here as well. So fertilizer are effectively a gas proxy. So fertilizer prices are going up significantly. And on top of that, but that also, as you know, is the farmers are buffered by higher subsidy burden. So they'll be supported by fiscal. And lastly, there will be chemicals and plastics, which are then directly flowing into customers. So again, with a lag, there could be some impact on inflation. But if this lasts longer than May, then I think the impact on inflation can be quite significant.
Just one final point. We are also seeing sustained FII selling, and the worry is the markets itself sending out the kind of signals. They're, of course, one part of it. Do you believe that the uncertainty, therefore, is what really we should be guarding against? The longer this continues, more uncertainty, and therefore, all of it means that India is no longer insulated in any manner from what happens in West Asia.
So India's dependency on the world, so given that we net import about 50% of our dense energy in various forms, so oil, gas, metallurgical coal, edible oil, fertilizer, so all of this put together makes us significantly vulnerable to global energy price volatility. And that's exactly what we are seeing. In the first week after the war started, there was a general risk off because people don't know what to do. So they're cutting down risk, which is where EMs get sold off, and every stock market, every risk asset gets sold off. The weeks after that, the days after that, the markets become more discerning. So then they say, okay, so if oil is going to be higher, then let me reward the companies or the countries that are going to be selling oil, but whose supplies have not been disrupted, and let me stay away from markets like India, or Korea, which are net energy importers and therefore are likely to get hurt by this. But what our research shows, and my team has been showing this, that once the prices have stabilized, even if at a higher level, the stock markets on the whole, when the uncertainty slows down, because at this stage, there are some people saying oil will go to 150. Who knows? Now, once that starts to happen, other things start to break down, meaning that, so if say a Pakistan or some meaningful sized economy, which is very vulnerable, like Pakistan over the weekend had to raise prices by 25%. So if these economies start to get into trouble because they don't have any buffer, like we have, several weeks, if not months of buffer, even on our foreign exchange side. But there are economies which may not have that, and then defaults start happening. And then the financial markets go into second order, third order problems. So that uncertainty is what is, I think, punishing the markets right now. But our assessment is that if oil prices stabilize, albeit at a higher level for a couple of weeks, I don't think there'll be a sustained negative impact on the markets.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there, Neelkanth. Clearly worrying times, largely because of the uncertainty. No one knows really just how long the crisis in the Middle East will last. But thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with us here on the news today. Thanks.
Thank you.
Now, key to this is India's exposure to the Strait of Hormuz. Remember, 50% of crude oil imports, 85% of LPG supplies come through the Strait of Hormuz, which is what is being targeted at the moment by Iran and which is at the center of this conflict. There you can see the Strait of Hormuz close to Iran, and that, in a sense, has become key. 55% of LNG shipments as well come through the Strait of Hormuz. So the Strait of Hormuz has a disproportionate impact on India's oil economy, not just India, but several other Asian countries as well. I want to now go to Ajay Singh. He's an energy and shipping expert, advisor to Japanese corporation based in Tokyo, to give me a worldview of where this goes now. Ajay, appreciate you joining us. Oil prices surging today, eclipsing $100 per barrel, going as high as 114, then coming down after reports that the G7 could be meeting to possibly dip into their strategic reserve, that Aramco could have spot sales. How do you explain this crazy volatility in oil prices in the last 24 hours across the world?
Well, bear in mind that the markets have opened today after the weekend. Now, the US had set out some rather ambitious goals, things like regime change and unconditional surrender were the terms coming out of Washington. Quite evidently, none of those sorts of things seem to be happening. So we are in day 10 or 11 of the conflict now. And considering that 20-25% of the world's oil and gas comes out of that Strait of Hormuz, which continues to be blocked. There is no oil and gas being exported out of the Persian Gulf right now. So the markets have simply taken fright, and that's been reflected in the sharp increase in oil price. Now, that said, I think the point is that the fundamental supply position in many parts of the world does not actually justify just yet such a dramatic increase. There are significant stocks of oil and gas, commercial stocks, as well as the so-called strategic reserves in many countries around the world. So we are not at the point yet where there is likely to be a physical scarcity, but the markets are factoring in the possibility of this being a protracted war because the Iranians are actually fighting back.
May I ask you to look at, for a moment, at the Strait of Hormuz, which in an article that you wrote, you said that this is really the critical factor affecting oil economies, handles about 15 million barrels of crude oil per day, roughly 20% of the world's supply. Are we to assume that as long as the situation remains unresolved or uncertain in West Asia, the Strait of Hormuz blocked to many ships, we could continuously see this volatility? Is that now key before we can give, what will it take in a way to give a measure of calm, you believe, to oil prices and markets?
Well, I'm afraid I think we will continue to see this sort of volatility because that volume of oil and gas supply going off the market suddenly, it's impossible to replace in anything like several months or even years. So the markets will continue to be sensitive. Now, when you get visuals on television of Iranian drone and missile strikes on tankers or on oil and gas production facilities, they look very dramatic. The actual destruction of oil and gas assets is not that significant, thankfully, but it looks very dramatic. And in the day of social media and 24/7 television coverage, this immediately gets amplified in the oil price. What it will take to really calm the markets down is an end of the conflict. I think what's happening at the moment, I'm not a military man, but it would seem that the US and Israel are engaged in a systematic degradation of Iranian military capabilities. They have said it will take 4 to 6 weeks, let's say by the end of this month or early April. By then, if there is a very clear subsidence, reduction in Iranian oil and Iranian attacks on shipping or oil and gas facilities, then the markets will calm down. Or if there is some sort of a conciliatory message coming out of both Tehran and Washington and Jerusalem, some sort of a political settlement, ceasefire, what have you, That is really
Right.
what is needed to calm the markets down.
But let's just for a moment look at India. India's exposure to the Straits of Hormuz is huge. I gave those details. I'll put them up on air again. These are very troubling times in that sense. Is India far more impacted than many other parts of the world, or are we just as impacted as any other Asian country in particular?
I think India is as impacted as many other economies in Asia. China and Japan are also critically dependent on the Persian Gulf for oil and gas supplies. But yes, India's situation is potentially quite sensitive. I think the government has announced, I was reading in the press, that they have 74 days of stocks, commercial and strategic reserves. Against the sorts of timelines we've been discussing, that seems like a reasonable position. So let's hope for the best. I think in case of LPG, the dependence on the Persian Gulf is particularly high, 85-90%, as you said. I think going forward in the long run, that's certainly something to look at. That level of dependency on a single region is far too high. And in case of LNG, I think the tendency of Indian buyers to purchase more volumes when prices are favorable and not to maintain very high levels of strategic reserves, that's also something which perhaps will need to be reviewed going forward.
Just to ask you in conclusion, alternatives to mitigate this disruption of energy flow via the Straits of Hormuz. Do India and other countries have alternatives to mitigate this disruption of energy flow?
Well, we'll have to look for supplies from other locations. So when it comes to both oil as well as LNG, the United States is a major supplier. The need to find shipping in the short run to bring those supplies to the markets, that will be the critical factor. There are other regions as well. You would look at perhaps West Africa for more oil supplies and so on. But within the Middle East itself, Saudi Arabia has a major on-land pipeline with the capability to divert volumes from the Persian Gulf to the Red Sea. The Red Sea has so far remained closed to shipping as well because of the threat from the Houthi rebels. But perhaps that may be a quieter zone compared to the Persian Gulf for now. So all of these calculations would be going on in the minds of the oil ministries and the various navies of the world. Let's see what opens up.
Okay. Ajay Singh, for giving us a worldview in a way of where we stand on this oil shock. I appreciate you joining me at the moment there from Tokyo. Okay, just to tell you that Parliament's budget session, which resumed today, predictably had the West Asia crisis at the center of a flashpoint between the government and the opposition. The opposition wants a full discussion on the West Asia crisis. The government's External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar gave a statement saying India is pushing for dialogue and diplomacy and that the Modi government is closely monitoring the situation. Rahul Gandhi says that response is inadequate, as do other opposition leaders. Let's listen in to what Dr. Jaishankar and Rahul Gandhi said.
We believe, and we continue to believe, that dialogue and diplomacy should be pursued to de-escalate tensions and address underlying issues. Sir, it is also imperative that the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all states in the region be respected. Government remains committed to ensuring that fully, taking into account availability, costs, and risks of the energy markets. For us, the interests of the Indian consumer has and will always be the overriding priority.
वेस्ट एशिया का जो मामला है, क्या वो ज़रूरी नहीं है क्या? फ्यूल प्राइस, इकोनॉमिक डेविस्टेशन, ये ज़रूरी नहीं है क्या? तो ये जनता की इशू है, इसको हम ज़रूरी मानते हैं, इस पे हम डिस्कशन चाहते हैं, बट वो डिस्कशन करना नहीं चाहते हैं, क्योंकि उसमें दूसरी बातें निकलेंगी, उसमें प्राइम मिनिस्टर की पोजीशन निकलेगी, प्राइम मिनिस्टर का जो पूरा कॉम्प्रोमाइज हुआ है, जो उन पर ब्लैकमेल किया जा रहा है, वो सवाल उठेगा, तो उसको डिस्कस नहीं करना चाहते. आपने देखा प्राइम मिनिस्टर भाग गए, पार्लियामेंट हाउस से भाग गए.
Let's get you through the top 5 war developments on day 10 of the conflict in West Asia. Iran finally announced its new supreme leader today. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's second son, Mojtaba Khamenei, succeeds his father. China and Russia have welcomed the decision, but US-Israel assert he's a threat and will remain a target. The only oil refinery in Bahrain, Bapco, has been struck by Iran as it continues to attack Gulf neighbors. Videos showed the refinery on fire and black smoke billowing out of the facility. The United States has expressed its displeasure with Israel for striking 30 oil depots in Iran. Reports suggest President Trump had opposed the idea, fearing it could garner support for the regime in Tehran, push the global oil prices higher. NATO air and defense missiles have neutralized an Iranian ballistic missile from entering Turkish airspace. Istanbul warned Tehran of retaliation, warned them against escalating tensions. Even as the United States denies a role in the deadly strike at an Iranian school, new evidence points their role in the attack that killed 175, most of them children. A new video of the strike suggests the missile was a Tomahawk, which the US military uses. Okay, now the war has brought many Iranian dissidents who live outside their country to speak out against the regime. One of them is now joining me. I'm joined by Elnaz Nuruzi. She is an actor who acts in Hindi pictures. I appreciate you joining us, or Indian cinema as you call it, Elnaz. Thanks very much for joining me. Tell me, I know you feel strongly about your Iranian heritage. Let me start, therefore, by asking you, how do you see the situation in your country over the last 10 days? The relentless bombings, the manner in which Ali Khamenei was assassinated, and the likelihood of even more violence. How do you see the situation from where you are today outside Iran?
Hi, so thank you for having me, and thank you for finding it important to see the point of view of an Iranian. Throughout this interview, I'm going to try and voice the majority of Iranians' voices here and try and make the world understand, as much as it sounds cruel. The Iranian people have been asking for help for many, many years now. You know, it's been 47 years that this regime has been in power. And at this point, it has reached a place where the Iranians have been massacred in January and in many, many other different dates in history where this regime has gone against them and where they had no voice and no power to overthrow them. So at the moment, you will see a majority of Iranians taking pictures and videos of the bombs coming into the country, but super excited because they know that they're targeted at the IRGC and at the regime, and they're so excited and they have so much hope that finally this regime is going to fall, maybe.
You know, hold on. You know, you're saying they're excited by bombs, but let's be clear, Elnaz, we've seen a school which was bombed and more than 160 innocent schoolgirls died. And there is enough evidence that the Americans were involved in this. There are fears, therefore, that if this continues, more and more civilian lives will be lost. Aren't you concerned that all of this could only result in further destruction of your country and the possibility of a civil war breaking out? Doesn't that worry you? Or do you simply want the regime first out at all costs?
Of course, it worries everybody in Iran, and everybody is really sad about the fact that our country had to reach this point. But the 160 schoolgirls now are something that the world is seeing. But when the regime poisoned a full girls' school many years back, nobody paid attention. When the regime killed more than 40,000 people in January on the 8th and 9th, and then turned off the internet for the whole world so that nobody can talk about it, nobody paid attention to that. When the regime has been executing, we have the highest rate of executions in Iran. So many people, so many women, so many men, nobody pays attention to that. We Iranians know that there will be a lot of casualties, but we also know that there are casualties every day. There are more people dying when there is no war than when there is war. And this is something that will be very, very hard for people to understand. And people will think that I am for war. I'm not for war. Iranians are not for war. We don't want this. But we have no other way to remove this regime that has been killing its own people over the years.
But, you know, Elnaz, the fact is the regime has been in power for 47 years. Now Mojtaba Khamenei is reportedly taking over from his father. And there are those who claim that voices like yours are a minority who support the pre-1979 Shah regime. How do you see it? Do you believe that Iran is a divided society? Do you really believe that the majority of Iranians want this regime out at all costs?
So the majority wants the regime out, and you can Google that on Gaman. They did they asked the Iranians, and more than 75% of the Iranians want this regime gone. It's out there. Everybody can go check it out. Less than 20% are regime supporters, but because Iran is so big and there are more than 90 million people, even 20% of that are millions and millions of people. So it is, of course, they have supporters, but those supporters are mainly people who do benefit from the regime. They get many, many funds. And these are, again, things that everybody knows. Iranians know that. And if you actually dig, you will find enough evidence that majority of Iranians want this regime gone.
I must ask you this, and I ask you this also as a woman. Do you feel particularly strongly because of the manner in which gender rights have been systematically abused by the regime? Is that where the angst comes from? Is that the particular source of your anger against this regime?
Of course, it is a source of anger, but what I really want to stress on is the fact that this is not only about women anymore. Our men are suffering too. People in Iran have no money to eat food anymore. People take out loans to buy eggs and chicken. The economy in Iran has become, and I can tell you that because my family lives there, because my friends live there, and the friends of my friends who are abroad live there as well. Life in Iran has become unbearable. It is not only about the women anymore, but yes, you're right. Gender apartheid is huge in Iran and has always been.
You know, there are those who will be listening to you, Elnaz, today saying that, look, she's virtually supporting what Donald Trump and Netanyahu are doing. They are the ones who want to use these aerial bombings and eventually decide who the future leader will be. Are you supporting what Donald Trump and Netanyahu are doing? Can outside forces decide the kind of regime Iran should have? Shouldn't that decision be left to the people of Iran?
It is decided by the people of Iran, sir. When you see the protest before the 8th and 9th of January, which started in December last year, that's when people, millions and millions of people, went on the roads and chanted that they want their Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi back. This decision is made by the Iranians, and the Iranians are very clear about that. And when Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi called for the Iranians to come out on the 8th and 9th, millions and millions came out and chanted his name. So the Iranians know very well who they want. And it's not at all up to Trump or Netanyahu to decide that. The Iranians have decided that for themselves already.
Elnaz Uruzi, for speaking to me, I appreciate you joining me and giving us your viewpoint. One of the aims on News Today is to get as many diverse viewpoints here on the West Asia conflict. Thanks very much for joining us. You're with the News Today. Let's go to the story that's brought a smile on every face. The man behind, or the coach behind Team India's historic T20 World Cup, Gautam Gambhir, spoke exclusively to my colleague Nitin Srivastava at India Today. He said the men in blue are capable of everything. Their next goal, eyeing the 2027 ODI World Cup. Take a look.
गौतम भाई, इस टीम को ना हमने 2024 से लेकर 2026 2 सालों में एक अलग तरीके से खेलते हुए देखा है, और जब से आपने टीम के साथ आप जुड़े हैं, वो एक अप्रोच भी अग्रेसिव अप्रोच नज़र आया। तो जब आपने टीम को ज्वाइन किया तो क्या चल रहा था कि मुझे वाइट बॉल के अंदर में, स्पेशली T20 के फॉर्मेट में, या फिर जब हम ODI खेलते हैं, अलग अलग अप्रोच नज़र आते हैं। इस T20 फॉर्मेट में आपकी क्या सोच थी?
बहुत सिंपल कि हाई रिस्क हाई रिवॉर्ड। 120 या 240 गेंदों में आप जितना मैक्सिमम इम्पैक्ट क्रिएट कर सकते हैं, आप उतना इम्पैक्ट क्रिएट कीजिए, बिकॉज आपके पास मौका नहीं है कमबैक करने का। और अल्टीमेटली आप सबड्यूड होकर T20 फॉर्मेट कभी भी नहीं जीत सकते। आप सबड्यूड होकर आप कभी भी डोमिनेट नहीं कर सकते। आप कभी भी अपने शेल में रह के कभी भी डोमिनेट नहीं कर सकते। जैसे मैंने कल प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में बोला था कि डिफरेंस बिटवीन विनिंग एंड लूजिंग इज़ कि आप जब माइलस्टोन्स के पास होते हो तो आप किस तरीके की बैटिंग करते हो। अगर आप माइलस्टोन्स के बारे में सोच रहे हो तो शायद आप अपने टीम को 15-20 रन कम करते हो, और वही 15-20 रन एक्चुअली मुझे लगता है कि इज अ डिफरेंस बिटवीन विनिंग द वर्ल्ड कप एंड लूजिंग द वर्ल्ड कप।
वर्ल्ड कप के ठीक पहले एक छोटा सा आप कह सकते हैं हेडेक भी आया, क्योंकि न्यूजीलैंड के दौरान हमने देखा कि संजू के रन्स नहीं आ रहे थे और फिर ईशान चलिए वहाँ पर थे, लेकिन एज अ कोच आप उस वक्त आपको लग रहा था कि यार संजू के रन नहीं आ रहे हैं, हमारा वर्ल्ड कप अब नज़दीक आ रहा है, हमारे लिए क्या एक बेहतर रास्ता हो सकता है जाने के लिए, तो एक छोटा सा पॉइंट ऑफ कंसर्न था।
देखिए, ऐसा कभी भी नहीं होगा कि सारे ही खिलाड़ी इन्फॉर्म होंगे, ऐसा कभी हुआ भी नहीं है। किसी टीम के साथ ऐसा नहीं हुआ कि आप वर्ल्ड कप में जाओ तो आपके स्क्वाड के सारे खिलाड़ी इन्फॉर्म हो, बिकॉज कभी ऐसा भी आएगा कि कोई फॉर्म में होगा, कोई नई फॉर्म में होगा। जैसे अगर आपने देखा संजू फॉर्म में नहीं था या संजू के रन नहीं बने थे न्यूजीलैंड के अगेंस्ट, लेकिन जिस तरीके से उसने बल्लेबाजी करी वर्ल्ड कप में, आई थिंक इट्स अ ड्रीम फॉर एनी क्रिकेटर कि अगर आप मुझसे बात करें, और इनफैक्ट इट वाज द अदर वे अराउंड फॉर अभिषेक शर्मा। तो
You can watch that entire interview on Sports Today. Okay, now the star, as we are saying, is Sanju Samson, the most famous Thiruvananthapuramite at the moment, and perhaps one of the big reasons why India went on to win that record third T20 World Cup. His fearless batting, match-winning knocks led him to be awarded the player of the tournament despite playing just 5 days. Earlier today, I spoke with Sanju Samson's father, Samson Vishwanath, a former Delhi police constable, who revealed the reasons behind his son's success. Tonight, I leave you with this interview, a reminder that behind every successful young man or woman in sports are often committed parents. Thanks for watching. Stay well, stay safe. Good night. Shubh Ratri. Jai Hind. Namaskar. Listen in to Samson Vishwanath. The hero, the man of the tournament, Sanju Samson's father, Samson Vishwanath. Namaskar. Congratulations for Sanju's remarkable success.
Thank you.
मैं जानना चाहता हूं कि पहले तो हाउ डू यू सी संजू सक्सेस, क्योंकि 1-1.5 महीने पहले आप थोड़े नाराज थे कि संजू को चांस नहीं मिल रहा है, उसके करियर को एक तरह से दबाया जा रहा है। आज जब संजू ने देश भर को इतनी खुशियां दी है, किस तरह से देखते हैं जो हुआ है पिछले 3 मैचों में खास करके?
कुछ स्ट्रगल तो वो हुआ है पिछले 2-3 महीनों में, उसने जो डिस्टर्ब हुआ है। तो अभी ये जो 3 इनिंग्स आया हमारे संजू से, और इसमें बहुत खुश हूँ। सारे जो पिछले का जो भी डिस्टर्बेंस है सब भूल गया हूँ मैं, सब भूल गया।
क्या ये 3 मैच में आपने क्या फर्क देखा? यू ऑलवेज हैड कॉन्फिडेंस इन संजूज एबिलिटी, यू ऑलवेज सेड कि संजू एक बढ़िया प्लेयर बनेगा, लेकिन इन 3 मैचों में क्या कुछ अलग आपको दिखा संजू के बैटिंग में, या उसी तरह से उसने बैटिंग की जो आप जब वो छोटा था उसी जो कंपोजर से उसने बैटिंग की? बड़े काम था पूरे इस तीनों इनिंग्स में।
ये इन्होंने अभी जो ये जो तीनों इनिंग्स कंप्लीट किया ना, एकदम क्लास क्रिकेट। जब क्या उसमें कोई एक भी शॉट ऐसा उसमें उसका बैट से आया नहीं कि बिल्कुल कूल, फ्री, टेंशन फ्री, इतना क्लीन फ्री होके खेल रहा था हर बॉल को। वो ये तीनों इनिंग्स में ये जो बचपन में वो जो करता था वो वही किया। अभी इससे पहले ये कुछ वहाँ ऐसे नहीं करता था वो। कुछ साल में उसको बोलता था यार थोड़ा सा अपने पुराना स्टाइल में आ जा, वापस आ जा, लेकिन वो मानता नहीं था। जाता 4 हिट 5 आउट, लोगों का ताना सुनना।
सैमसन विश्वनाथ जी, ये आपने 4 साल की उम्र में शुरू किया। कब आपने पहली बार देखा कि संजू में कुछ टैलेंट है, जिसके लिए एक तरह से आप दिल्ली पुलिस में थे, आपने नौकरी छोड़ी, वापस केरल गए, उसको ज्यादा अपॉर्चुनिटी मिले, कब आपने सोचा यार मेरे बेटे में कुछ टैलेंट है?
टैलेंट तो सर मैं बताता हूँ, 3.5 साल की उम्र मेरा छोटे बेटे का, 5 साल की उम्र मेरे बड़े बेटे का, तब इनको मैंने क्रिकेट बैट बॉल दिया, इनके साथ जुड़ गया मैं भी, ये इनके साथ चलते रहा, ये भी मेरे बेटे साथ चलते रहे। तो इनका जो बैटिंग ट्रेनिंग के बाद शाम को घर पे बैठते थे, सचिन जी के, मैं बोलता हूँ सचिन जी का, द्रविड़ जी का बैटिंग फॉलो करते थे मेरे बच्चे,
पर
मतलब सीनियर्स को इतनी आराम से खेलते थे।
What was the turning point? कि संजू के करियर में आपके लिए टर्निंग पॉइंट क्या थी? When he played for Rajasthan Royals and became first got national recognition, what was the turning point? आपके हिसाब से कौन सी टर्निंग पॉइंट थी?
टर्निंग पॉइंट वही था, मैंने दिल्ली का नौकरी छोड़ दिया था।
अच्छा।
वही टर्निंग पॉइंट था। वहाँ पे मैं दिल्ली में, मेरे बच्चा एक ट्रायल में गया, उसको मिला नहीं, तो वहाँ पे मैंने उसको किसी और ट्रायल के लिए मैंने वेट किया होता, और एक दो ट्रायल के लिए और वेट किया होता। मेरा बेटे के मन में कुछ गलत चीज़ें घुसेगी, मेरा बस का है नहीं, लेकिन मेरा बस का है तो मुझे सिलेक्शन मिलेगा नहीं, मैं इसको कुछ भी मेहनत करे कोई फ़ायदा नहीं। तो मेरे बच्चों के मन में, मेरे बच्चों के मन में ऐसे कोई चीज़ घुसने से पहले मैंने अपने डिसीजन बदल दिया, मैं दिल्ली छोड़ दूंगा।
यस पर ये मुझे बताओ, व्हेन संजू वन द मैन ऑफ द टूर्नामेंट, या व्हेन ही स्कोर्ड अगेंस्ट वेस्ट इंडीज, अगेंस्ट इंग्लैंड, देन अगेंस्ट न्यूजीलैंड इन फाइनल, आपने फोन पे बात की, क्या कहा संजू? व्हाट डिड संजू टेल यू ऑन द फोन आफ्टर ही हैड स्कोर्ड दीज रन्स?
संजू का मेरा कम्युनिकेशन नहीं था। न्यूजीलैंड के खिलाफ मैच था, एक मैच फेल हो गया, दूसरा मैच वो फेल हो गया। दूसरा मैच फेल होते मैं रात को डिस्टर्ब नहीं करता, सुबह मैंने 7-8 बजे उसको फोन किया, मैं यहाँ पे जहाँ बैठा वहाँ पे था। फोन करते मैंने बोला, बेटा क्या हो रहा है यार, वर्ल्ड कप सामने है तेरा और तू आके लिए यहाँ पे परफॉर्म करना है, तेरे साथ क्या हो रहा है यार, 2 मैच हो गया यार। फिर मेरा बेटा ऐसे बोला, अच्छा मेरे से नहीं हो रहा, अच्छा ऐसे बोल रहा है। उसने आज तक ऐसे शब्द क्रिकेट के लिए निकाला नहीं, उसका शब्द में दर्द था। मैंने बोला, बेटा 2 बार तू फेल हो गया, क्या यार ऐसे कैसे? बोला, अच्छा मेरे से नहीं हो रहा, ऐसा बोला। मैंने चुपचाप, बेटे रुक, फोन रख। मैंने गाड़ी पकड़ा। मैं उसका फादर हूँ, मेरा फर्ज है उसको अच्छा उसके अच्छा दिन दे, उसकी अच्छा लाइफ दे, तो अच्छा जिंदगी जिए। मैं एक फादर की नाते मैंने कोई सैक्रिफाइस नहीं किया, मेरा बेटे को मेरे अपनी फर्ज निभाया। थैंक यू बॉस, थैंक यू सर।